Okay, thank you very much. It's an honor, a pleasure to have you with us. Uh, uh, Here we have Meral Çiçek, who was born in 1983 in a Kurdish guest worker family in Germany. She started political and women's activism at the age of 16 within the Kurdish Women's Peace Office in Dusseldorf. While studying political science, sociology, and history at Goethe-University in Frankfurt, she started to work as a reporter and editor for the only daily Kurdish newspaper in Europe, Yeni Ozgur Politika, for which she still writes a weekly column. In 2014, she co-founded the Kurdish Women's Relations Office in Southern Kurdistan or Northern Iraq, and she is also an editorial board member of the Jineoloji journal. So it is a great honor to be able to talk to you about the situation right now, very desperate, dire situation in many respects. If you could tell us a little bit about what's going on in southern Kurdistan with respect to this Turkish incursion, this latest Turkish invasion, and the bombing of the Makhmur camp. If you could enlighten us a little bit about the situation.
Yeah, hello, and thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to talk about the situation here in Iraqi Kurdistan. As you may know, the Turkish army is intending to occupy southern Kurdistan since a couple of years. So that means in the past there have been some military operations, but especially the last 3 years in one part of the mountains, of the mountainous area in southern Kurdistan, which is controlled by the PKK guerrilla fighters. The Turkish army set up positions, and there are still ongoing clashes and fightings, and the attempt of the Turkish army to bring more soldiers in and to occupy that particular region, cutting off crossing lines of the guerrilla. This is one thing. On the other side, since the 24th of July 2015, that means only 2 or 3 months after the cut of the dialogue process between the founder and leader of the PKK, Abdullah Öcalan, on Imralı Island and the Turkish government, the Turkish army is flying airstrikes against northern Iraqi soil, positions of the PKK, but also places where civilians live. And beside this, nowadays also Makhmur refugee camp and Shingal or Sinjar, for example, which is the homeland of the Yazidis. So that means we are in a situation where Turkish unmanned airplanes, which are produced by the Turkish army itself, by Turkey, are constantly flying, not only in mountainous regions, but nowadays also over Suleimani and Makhmur and Shingal. That means they are observing the region, looking for movement, trying to observe and find out, let's say, objectives. And on the other side, strikes. By either usual warplanes or also unmanned drones, which are armed. And this is a situation which is continuing without stop for more than 5 years now. And on Sunday night at 12 o'clock local time, suddenly there was a very big offensive, air offensive by the Turkish army with the participation of dozens of warplanes, bombing several areas that are called media defense areas, which are under control by the PKK guerrilla forces, where but also civilians live. That means in these areas you have hundreds of Kurdish villages also. It's not just a military area, but at the same time, Makhmur refugee camp and Sinjar, the homeland of the Yazidis, was bombed. According to an official statement by the Turkish military or by the Turkish Defense Ministry, 81, let's say, places have been bombed on that night within, let's say, 1 hour.
And yeah, so very dire situation. And could you tell a little bit about what the feeling is on the ground, how people have responded to this latest aggression?
I mean, this latest aggression was the biggest airstrike after July 2015. I mean, we often hear the planes or the drones in the places where we're living also. For example, I'm based now in Süleymaniye, which is, let's say, 2.5 hours from Kandil. But there are drones, unmanned drones flying in the sky over Süleymaniye. And in Süleymaniye last year in autumn, there was also one strike by the Turkish army within the city where 2 people were killed. And it's still not clear with what kind of weapon these people were killed. You know, it was not an air attack they are using against the Kurdish people usually, you know, or let's say in other areas, because in the city you would create very big destruction if you use these kind of bombs. But 2 people, 2 members of the PKK have been killed inside the city of Süleymaniye last year. So because of this creates a situation of fear, because although you are not directly in a situation or in a region of war, you are under risk, your life is under threat, because you have these drones, you have this armed or unarmed drones flying over your head. And then, I mean, even you never know what will happen, because you can see it's not just connected to the Turkish military, which really developed its own military industry within the last years after USA refused to give them some pieces they needed for their planes, you know. And that was the reason why the Turkish government just thought, okay, then let's develop our own industry and develop our own arms. This is one issue. But on the other side, for example, you might remember that after New Year's Eve, Qasem Soleimani and Al Muhandis were killed by the US military during a drone attack in Baghdad. So because of this, we can see that a kind of paradigm in warship is changing, which is changing also moral in fighting. And you are in a situation where you don't see your enemy. You are on the ground as a civilian or a fighter, and suddenly a plane comes and just kills you, you know? And this is a situation with a lot of civilian casualties also in, let's say, in the mountainous areas, but also in Makhmur, because this last strike was the 4th one, and also in Sinjar, where a lot of civilian people are also injured or lose their lives, or their homes are destroyed. And I mean, the situation in Sinjar and in Makhmur is very special also, if you compare it to the situation in Kandil, for example, because these people are still traumatized. I mean, Makhmur, the people, let's say 12,000 residents of this refugee camp, they are originally from Northern Kurdistan, which is Turkish part of Kurdistan. They had to leave their destroyed villages in the 90s because of state oppression by the Turkish state. They came to Iraqi Kurdistan, and they had a very, very difficult history also here. This is one issue. And that camp was attacked by ISIS in 2014. And at the same time, Sinjar, or Shingal, how we used to call it in Kurdish, was attacked also by ISIS. So these people have been traumatized very frequently by ISIS attacks. And now, I mean, after their soil had been liberated from ISIS, now they are under threat of the Turkish government, of the Turkish army. And especially for the people in Sinjar, this is something not understandable, because they have no connection to the Turkish state. I mean, the people in Makhmur, living in Makhmur, they are Turkish citizens at the same time. So they have a kind of, you know, they are in this situation for, let's say, nearly 30 years. But the people, the Yazidi people living in Sinjar, they have no border to Turkey, for example. You know, they have no direct connection to Turkey, but they are, since I think 3 years under the threat of the Turkish military.
And this latest attack happening in the conditions, in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic. Could you speak a little bit more about what the situation is in the Makhmur camp in particular with respect to the response to the COVID pandemic and how this aggression complicates the situation?
Okay, so the COVID pandemic was feelable starting in February. The Kurdish government, so the Kurdish regional government of northern Iraq, took steps against it very early, against the spreading of the virus. So that means that starting by 13th of March, there was a kind of curfew announced, which continued for about 40 days. That means traffic was prevented. So on one side, traffic between cities was completely banned, and this is still continuing. But inside the cities, also traffic by car was banned. So that means you could move inside your own quarters. You could go to a shop to buy food or bread, but that was all. You could not travel to somewhere else inside the city with the car. And this really stopped spreading the virus inside the Kurdish region. And then later, the Ramadan fasting time started. And then the government decided to ease it and just continue the ban of traffic between the big cities. So inside Süleymaniye province, not just the city of Süleymaniye, but inside the province and Süleymaniye, there haven't been any ban anymore since the end of April. Suddenly, in May, the number of infections rose up again. Not just in the Kurdish region, but in whole Iraq, and I would say in the whole Gulf states, in Saudi Arabia and also in other countries. And now we are in a situation where the government is not able to impose any ban or any curfew because the people are protesting. They have been protesting against it. During the Ramadan festivities, the government decided to announce a curfew for 3 days and wanted to declare another one for a week after it. And the people, they were to cancel it. The reason is that people here living in Iraqi Kurdistan are not getting any loans. Sorry, not loans, but their how you call it, the money they earn. They do not get. I mean, those people who usually get their salary. Those people who get their salary from the government itself, which is a very high number, about 2 million people by, let's say, a total number by a population of 5 million. So let's say 40% of the people living here get their salaries from the government itself. So the government is not able to pay salaries because of an economical crisis in general, and also because of the results of COVID-19 and the effects on oil prices. Because at the moment it's for the government not possible to earn any money through oil sellings. So because of this, there is no money left. They are not able to pay the people. These people are not getting any salaries since 6 months. And there are a lot of protests at the moment, despite the virus. And they are saying either you pay us our salaries or you won't declare any curfew, because if we can't open our shops, we will not be able to feed our people, for example, our families. So that's a very bad situation. Because of this, people are not now outside. But there are more or less no measures against the virus. People are wearing masks, but not all. And I mean, also let's say the health system itself is not very strong. So that means that we are in a very dangerous situation, and health workers, especially in Süleymaniye, they declared that they will make a strike, that they won't work as long as the government will not pay their salaries. So that is a situation in general in the Kurdish region. The situation in Makhmur refugee camp is more special, because last year in July, one member of the Turkish intelligence was killed in the city of Erbil, which is very close to Makhmur. Because those who made this action were Kurds from the northern part of Kurdistan, And because the KDP, which is ruling in Erbil, which is the biggest party in this part of Kurdistan, made a connection, a political connection between those who killed this person and the people living in a Makhmur refugee camp, because most of them have been supporters of the Kurdish Liberation Movement or the PKK, and that's the reason why they had to leave Turkish Kurdistan and become refugees in Iraqi Kurdistan, because of their political stance and position. And a lot of people, I mean, I would say that 99% of the families living in Makhmur have either a daughter or a child or a son or a father or a mother or any other relative either fighting within the ranks of the PKK as guerrilla or lost their lives in combat. So this is the political and social reality of these people. So that means that the KDP, after the killing of this representative or this member of the Turkish intelligence, in cooperation with Turkey or under pressure by Turkey, stopped people living in Makhmur from entering Erbil, which had been very big results or effects on the people, because Makhmur is just 40 kilometers southwest, if I'm not wrong, from Erbil. It's very close to Erbil. Majority of the students study in Erbil. Majority of the workers work in Erbil. So these people were prevented from continue to study or from working or from going to hospital, from getting medical treatment, from buying anything. So there is a kind of embargo imposed by the KDP on the camp, continuing since 11 months. So, and during this time, a lot of, I mean, for example, 2 pregnant women lost their babies because they were not allowed to go to Erbil, where you have a hospital, you know, and you don't have one in Makhmur, which is this district. So this situation is continuing. Because of this, the people of Makhmur are disconnected from Erbil since July 2019. And they have been isolated even before the spread of the virus. So because of this, we had no cases until now in Makhmur, because it's just under embargo, it's isolated. They are not able to travel. And I mean, on the other side, there is still an ongoing travel ban between the cities of that side. So that means, for example, people living in Makhmur are not able to enter Erbil since July 2019, but they are also not able to enter Kirkuk, because now there is a kind of travel ban between Kirkuk and Mosul also, or let's say Makhmur. So because of this, the camp is really isolated. And in such a situation, it's very difficult also to take attention to the situation in Makhmur itself. So there have been a lot of protests. They tried to reach a lot of international organizations and also national organizations in Iraq to solve the situation, because the KDP says that they had imposed this ban because of security reasons, but this kind of security reasons can't continue for 11 months. So there is a very special situation. So it's under threat or risk from a lot of different sides.
And what do you think are the prospects moving forward? There's a lot of uncertainty in the international arena with respect to the future of the Erdogan regime, etc. What does the future look like from Makhmur?
You know, the future of Makhmur is very deep connected to the political process in northern Kurdistan and Turkey, because these people had to leave their own soil in a collective way. And in the past, there have been some attempts, supported also by international forces like the US, to send these people back to Turkey, you know, to empty this camp. And we know that 4 days before the bombing of the camp, Hakan Fidan, who was the chief of the Turkish intelligence, came to Baghdad and met representatives of the Iraqi government. And only 4 days later, Makhmur and Sinjar, which both lies on disputed ground, so that means disputed between Iraq and Kurdistan, have been bombed. So this shows us that there have been a kind of pressure by the Turkish state on the Iraqi government to either close down Makhmur camp, which is not a new issue, but continuing since 2007 as a kind of demand by Turkey, because Turkey is saying it's the nest of terrorists. They aren't refugees, but they are, it's a nest of terrorists. And the same for Sinjar. So there's a lot of pressure because Turkey is telling the Iraqi government to not recognize self-government structures, and especially self-defense structures or forces by the people, by the Yazidi people in Sinjar, which are there to protect themselves. So this is one issue. The people of Makhmur have declared several times that they really want to return to Northern Kurdistan, to their cities, to their villages, which have been destroyed by the Turkish army, but only as part of a democratic solution process of the Kurdish question. So they are saying that this must be negotiated, so that the return of the people of Makhmur, which are refugees, and there is a reason why they had to leave their country, can't return to their soil, to Northern Kurdistan, without a solution of the Kurdish question. So because of this, the future of the camp is very deeply connected to the general situation in Northern Kurdistan. If we look at the situation, if we look at the policy of the Turkish government under Erdogan, which is not ready to solve the Kurdish question, but really return to a policy of denying and trying to destroy, developing really genocidal acts against the Kurds in every part of the struggle, the military part of the struggle, the political part of the struggle, let's say the social area, the social sphere, economically, culturally, really trying to destroy the Kurdish struggle for autonomy and self-determination. So because of this, we can say that return of the people of Makhmur to Northern Kurdistan seems to be very high at the moment. And the situation itself is also very, very complicated, because Makhmur, the situation of Makhmur is not just connected to the situation in Turkey or the development of the political process there, because Makhmur geographically lies in a disputed area. That means Makhmur is very close to Erbil, which is the capital of the Kurdish region of Iraq. But according to the administration, it belongs to Ninova province, whose capital is Mosul. So that's a very difficult situation, because Makhmur itself is populated by a Kurdish majority and an Arab minority. During the regime of Saddam Hussein, there was a kind of Arabization policy developed also against Makhmur. But when the Saddam regime was ended, because the majority of the people living there were Kurdish, the new government, with support from the USA, said, okay, let's give the control of Makhmur to the Kurds, because the people living there are mostly Kurds. That means that the governor from the city, from the town, has been from the KDP, the mayor also, health system, education system, they are all controlled by Erbil, which is under rule of the KDP. So that means that all the directors in Makhmur, acting in Makhmur, have been from the KDP, Kurds. But because it's disputed, there was a kind of conflict, who should rule. And in 2014, when ISIS attacked the camp, it was not defended by KDP, Asayish, or Peshmerga forces. So the people of the camp had to defend themselves, and they made a call to the fighters, to the guerrilla fighters of the PKK, to come to the camp and support them by defending the camp, which was very successful also. So in short time, the people could return to the camp, because during that time it had been evacuated completely. Only fighters had been left. I mean, when I talk about fighters, I don't mean just guerrilla fighters, but also people living. I mean, just residents of the camp that took arms to defend their camp and their homes and their families. That was the issue, you know. And later, and during that time, also Mesut Barzani, who is the leader of the KDP, and at that time he was the president of the Kurdish region, he visited the camp, met the commanders of the PKK guerrilla forces, and thanked them that they defended Makhmur, and by doing so prevented ISIS from getting into Erbil or attacking Erbil, because Makhmur is just between Mosul and Erbil. And remember that they first captured Mosul, and from there they tried to spread. And during that time, there was a kind of vacuum, which was also filled again by the Kurdish forces. And later in 2017, in autumn 2017, there was a referendum for independence in the Kurdish region. And 1 month after this referendum, the Iraqi army, as a kind of response, went back to the disputed areas, which had been under de facto control of the Kurds, and took them back. You know, and that's the reason why KDP affiliated Peshmerga and Asayish forces left Makhmur, despite the fact that the Maya and the government and so on continue to be the same persons, but now they get their salaries from the Iraqi government, but their orders from the Kurdish government. But the military, which is controlling the checkpoints, had been people from the Popular Mobilization Forces first, and later Iraqi army soldiers. So now those who are controlling the checkpoints around Camp Makhmur are Iraqis. This is a situation.
Complicated situation.
So that means that all kind of conflicts between Kurds and Iraqis have direct, let's say, results or reflections on the situation in Makhmur. This is one issue. Then enough factional conflicts within Iraqi army, which is not a homogeneous force, you know, or for example, let's say within Shias, also has results on them. And then another big issue is that ISIS is reorganizing around Makhmur. People say, according to official statements, there are about 1,000 ISIS members now sleeping cells around Makhmur, and they are attacking the camp and military posts in and around Makhmur. So this is a very difficult situation, and there is no kind of common plan to take security or to defend ISIS again, which is reorganizing. So the situation of the Iraqi state itself, let's say this whole big vacuum, because there are so strong, there's kind of struggle, you know, between the United States and Iran on a kind of regional hegemony on Iraq, continuing, and this kind of struggle for control, or let's say regional hegemony, has direct influence on the Kurdish region in general, and Makhmur especially. In particular. Wow. Because of this, it's a very complicated situation, and there are a lot of national, regional, and international dynamics that impose big effects on the situation of Makhmur, and they are in a very defenseless situation also, because that's another issue I wanted to point it out. You know, this camp was acknowledged or recognized by the UN. But these people, a couple of years ago, got their refugee IDs from the UN for the first time, and they expired. And the UN went there last year to give the people new IDs, but only a few thousand got new IDs, and the others did not. So that's another big issue, because they at the moment do not get any, let's say, health or food distribution, which they should, because that's another big issue, because UN also under pressure by Turkey, because Turkey is doing a lot of diplomatic activities to put pressure on Iraqi officials and UN officials to close the camp.
Mm.
You know, UN is not giving any support, and that's another issue, because they claim that this camp couldn't be considered a civilian refugee camp because the people are practicing self-defense.
Mm.
The people themselves, they are saying, okay, then come and defend us.
Mm.
When ISIS came, neither the Iraqi army nor KDP or KRG Peshmerga forces defended us. It was our own people, and it was the PKK guerrilla who came, helped us, and later went again. But they are saying, they are saying, for example, they claim that these people should not,
defend
defend
themselves.
Another issue is that it's self-organized.
Mm.
So it's a democratic model, because, for example, if you talk about refugee camps, mostly, especially in Europe, no, people think about problems and conflicts and other things. But Makhmur is at the same time a kind of democratic model, or a kind of alternative how refugee camps could be, because it's self-governed. You know, they have a democratic People's Council, which is elected by the people with co-chair. They have their own structures. They have schools. They have cooperatives. They have a lot of cultural centers. They believe in equality between man and woman. So it's a kind of democratic model which could be applied by other refugee camps. In northern Iraq and in other places too. So that's also kind of reason why the international state system is putting pressure on them, because they don't want such a self-organized autonomous camp. That's the issue.
Oh yeah, so it really becomes very clear both the strategic and the symbolic significance of the attack on Makhmur. Thank you very much. Very exhaustive, detailed explanation of the significance of the situation. Is there any last words that you want to give? Any last messages you want to give to people?
As I told you, at the moment, because the camp is under very deep pressure from different sides, I think it would be very good to show solidarity to the people in the camp. Maybe people could reach you, and you could give contact details, which I can share with you after the interview.
Great.
And reach the people, because they have very good democratic projects of, let's say, health centers, cultural centers, youth centers, women's centers, to support them in this very democratic, let's say, experience of alternative refugee camp in a communalist way. And I think that's very important to defend these people, which are victims of war for 30 years in such a situation, and show them concrete support.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. That's a very good way to end on this note of what international solidarity with the people of Makhmur and with the Kurdish freedom movement more generally should be looking like these days. So let's hopefully stay in touch, and hopefully the situation develops in a hopeful way. I know for one thing that the resistance will continue, and the struggle of the Kurdish people will continue. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Okay.